So the purpose of a spiritual discussion is to touch us, to lead to some sort of transformation, isn't it? And the ability to do so comes not just by being very intelligent or having some good speaking skills. It comes by mercy. Mercy from the Lord. Krishna has to bless us to be able to share this wisdom. And also the Acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual masters, they have to bless us to be able to share this knowledge with others. And ultimately, a great source of mercy is your eyes. And I'll tell you why. Because you see, when you're speaking to someone and they're listening to you, it inspires you to keep talking, right? Imagine if you're talking to someone, you come home from work one day, you're talking to your husband, and he's just busy like sometimes men are. Just, and you're like, oh, it's such a long day, da, da, da. And he's like, and you don't feel inspired to share. You're like, put the phone down, listen to me, look at me, right? So when somebody's paying attention, then the heart opens and we can speak more. So I request all of you to just give me a little bit of your attention. I'm not sharing something, these aren't my thoughts, these aren't my ideas. They're coming from the great scriptures of India, the great ancient wisdom scriptures. So I didn't make this stuff up. So if you can give a little bit of attention and hear these things, and then afterwards, my classes, I make it very dynamic and interactive. So I will ask for reflections and comments. You don't have to ask questions. Even if you can just share a reflection or a comment, that's very much appreciated. So please give me your attention and inspire me with your eyes. If you start to fall asleep, maybe I'll throw something at you. So. Our topic today is called the value-driven life. There's many ways to live our life. We can live according to our mind. We can live according to contemporary social values. We can live the money-driven life. We can live a comfort-driven life. We can live a success-driven life. But a value-driven life. Why a value-driven life? Let me ask you something. Who here wants to have a great life? Not just an ordinary, normal life, but a great life. Who? Everyone? Yes? Okay. Yes, yes? You want to have a great life, right? So what makes the difference between an ordinary life and a great life? It's not how successful the great person is. It's not how famous a great person is. It's actually their values. Somebody who lives a life driven by values, and especially, high spiritual or powerful values, they set themselves apart from everybody else, isn't it? When you meet somebody who has certain high principles and values that they can live for and die for, such a person is very impressive, isn't it? So, one of the missions in life, one of the great missions of our human form of life, is to go through life finding what are the values and principles that we can live for and die for. If we don't know what these values and principles are, we don't actually know who we are. This is a very important statement that I'm making. If we don't actually know what our values and principles are, things that we can really stand by, things that we truly believe in, right? We don't actually know who we are. How many of us here know we're spirit souls? How many of us know that? That we're not our bodies, Rahel? Do you have some conception that maybe you're more than your body, your energy, you're a soul? So I'll tell you right now, you're a soul. Now you know. You can raise your hand. You know you're not your body. How many of us have realized that? We can actually say, I feel it. Right? Of course, no one wants to raise their hand and be the special soul, but some of you, I'm sure, have, right? But what makes the difference between somebody who has that realization and someone who doesn't have that realization, right? When we live our life making certain decisions based on things we know, that knowledge becomes realization. Knowledge becomes realization when we make choices in life based on things that we know. When we act upon that which we know becomes our reality. If you want to know in scientific terms, I was speaking to a neuroscientist about this. Last Thursday, we had an event at my center that I run in downtown. We had a neuroscientist from Northwestern, and I was asking her to tell me the difference between information and realization. And she was explaining to me that actually, according to neuroscience, these two things live in different parts of the brain. You have something called the hippocampus. Anybody knows what that is? Prabhuji knows what that is. It's a part of the brain. That's all I know. It's a part of the brain. So there's a part of the brain called the hippocampus, and there's another part of the brain, I can't remember the name now, but she was explaining to me how when you just know something, it lives in a part of the brain that accesses short-term memory. So you can just recall it every now and again. But when you realize something, it lives in a different part of your brain. And then in your subconscious, you go through life making decisions based on that very deep underlying conception that's within your brain. But how do we get there? How does that idea become deeply rooted in our brain? We have to live according to it. And we can only live according to something when we have established that this is a value we want to live by, we want to follow in our day-to-day life. Make sense so far? The difference between ordinary life and great life is values, essentially. People who have established that these are some values I want to live by, that I want to die for. So, and what this allows us to do is then when you make decisions in life, you have something to take shelter of besides your own mind. Okay, so we have to make many decisions in life, right? For example, I have a friend here, Rahel, he's from UIC. It's his first time at a Hare Krishna temple. We have a club at UIC and he comes every week. And so I told him I'm giving a talk and he lives nearby, so he came. You're young, you'll have to make a lot of decisions in life, like what kind of job are you going to have? Who are you going to marry? Where are you going to live? What kind of house will you have? All these decisions require you can either make those decisions based on your mind, how you feel in the moment, how you feel those days, or you can have certain values that guide those decisions, right? Take, for example, finding a life partner. Do you go with somebody who's really good looking or somebody who's really smart? Somebody who has a lot of family values or somebody who's just really fun to be around? Someone who's very Indian or someone who's very American? How do you make these decisions? You have to have values. You have to have things that you appreciate, and that's what will allow you to pick and choose what kind of person you want to be with, right? So even a simple decision like what kind of life partner you have, if you want to do it right, we have to have certain values that guides this decision, right? What kind of spirituality do we want in our life? Do we want to just come to the temple once a week, once a year for Janmashtami, chant maybe 1 or 2 rounds a day, or do we want to go back to Godhead? What kind of spirituality we want to have is also a certain value. And when I say spirituality, I don't just mean looking like a devotee. There's a difference between looking like a devotee and living like a devotee, right? I'm looking like a devotee right now, right? But to live like a devotee means, what do I do when I'm all alone? When it's just me and my computer and me and my phone, or I'm at work, I'm outside of the store buying something, I'm talking to my mom on the phone and she gets mad at me for something, In those moments when nobody's looking, no one knows, can I actually think of Krishna conscious principles and act in a way that a devotee should act. So there's a difference between looking like a devotee and living like a devotee. But if you want to live like a devotee, again, that's a value. We have to establish that within ourselves, that I want to live like a devotee, not just look like one. You see the difference? Again, so it's all about what kind of values we have. So I think it's clear now that values are important, right? I want to share a few examples from our ancient scriptures where I think certain values are highlighted and they show us the relationship between character and values. It's very important. So there's a story of Dhruva Maharaja. Okay, so most of us here must be familiar with Dhruva Maharaja's story. I'll just give you a quick 30-second trailer. Dhruva Maharaja was a young prince, and he once wanted the affection of his father. But his father had 2 queens, and he was the son of the less favorite queen. So his father did not give him the affection he was looking for. So he became so pissed off that he decided to go and do something that made his father look very small. Just like, suppose you have a brother? Okay, I grew up with a brother. I have an older brother. He beat me up my whole life. So whenever he would beat me up, I wanted to do something to make him look really bad. This is just a natural tendency among us. If someone defeats us, then we want to do something to make them look really bad or feel really bad, and then we want to let them know, like, hey, I did this. It's a natural tendency, right? So Dhruva Maharaja had the same feeling. He went to the forest. Why? He wanted a kingdom bigger than his father's. He was so upset that his father refused him that he decided, let me do something to embarrass my own father. So he went looking for a kingdom bigger than his father's. And to do this, what did he do? He approached God. Because Krishna can fulfill all desires. If you want anything in life, you can just approach Krishna. So he approached Krishna, and in the journey of approaching Krishna for getting this huge kingdom, his heart became pure, and his anger and vengeance towards his father went away. And when he actually saw Krishna, he realized, you know what? I don't want a big kingdom. I'm happy I just got to see you. And Krishna's like, no, it's okay. You asked for it, you'll get it. You'll get the kingdom, but you won't be greedy for it like you were previously. You follow? So his feelings of revenge and vengeance went away. But he still got the kingdom. That's nice. He still got the kingdom. Now, fast forward a few years, he's now the emperor of the world, and he has a brother who gets killed by these dark forces called the yakshas. These dark soldiers called the yakshas. So to avenge the death of again, he's a warrior, so he got angry. And to avenge the death of his brother, he went chasing after these yakshas, and he started killing them by the thousands and millions. In fact, in the Bhagavatam, when you read the description, it's really like, it's better than Lord of the Rings, to be honest with you. It's so graphic, the way he was just slaughtering these people, you know? Finally, God spoke from the clouds, and he said, Dhruva, enough, enough. Like, to avenge the death of one brother, you've killed millions of yakshas. This isn't fair, right? It doesn't make sense. You know, if we're standing downstairs for prasadam and you cut in line in front of me, that's a small mistake. But you know, to revenge for that, I go and beat up, you know, smash your car or something. That's a bit unfair. Like, come on, you know, just cut in front of line for prasadam. It's not such a big deal, right? So God was like, they just killed one person, and you've killed millions of them. So he told Dhruva, be a hero. Control your mind and senses. And in that instant, because Dhruva was a value-driven individual, he accessed the value of being submissive to God's will. This is the value that's being highlighted here, is that he accepted God wants me to do something, so he just pulled back. He stopped being so angry and violent, and he submitted to the will of God. And he accessed the power of forgiveness. Again, a value-driven individual can access great qualities when they're reminded of it. Sometimes in this world, we might forget good qualities and good values. We might need a little reminder. So we see here in Dhruva's case that because he already had these values of submitting to the will of God, of being able to forgive, when he was reminded of this, he was able to just access that good quality. Another example is Dhruva Maharaja. Dhruva Maharaja is another young boy whose father was actually a very big demon called Hiranyakashipu. And his father wanted to kill him. So anyways, long story short, we were singing this prayer earlier to Lord Nrsingadev, who's a half-man, half-lion incarnation of God. So this incarnation of God comes to save his devotee Prahlad. And after saving Prahlad, he asks Prahlad, ask me for some special blessings. And what does Prahlad ask for? Even though his father was so evil, so demoniac, wanted to kill him, Prahlad says, I want you to liberate my father. He wanted liberation for his father. What he's highlighting here is the quality of forgiveness. A great soul, he was able to forgive. If he didn't have that value, then how would he be able to do it? Who here has heard of the Amish people? Do you know who the Amish people are? You know who the Amish are? You know who the Amish are? Yeah? They're a group of people, they're like Christians, I believe, and they have this belief that technology is not good. So they live in these farms where there's no technology, no internet, no phones. They wear very traditional clothing, they milk their own cows, they have their own schools. It's like these very tight communities that live usually in rural parts of America. If you go to Pennsylvania, you might see them on their horse, like literally even today they drive horse chariots. It's like, they just live like that. It's like their belief system that, you know, technology is not good. So that's their value. A couple of years ago, one person got into an Amish community and went into one of their schools and killed like 12 of their children. Just shot these children. You know, in America we have gun shootings all the time. It happens all the time. It's so dangerous in America because anybody can buy a gun. Literally anybody can go to Walmart and just buy a gun. It's that dangerous. So there was a school shooting and they killed 12 of these children, right? The next day, the Amish community released a statement saying, we forgive this person. He was mentally sick. We have no anger or feelings of hate towards him. We're praying that God blesses him and saves his soul, and we completely forgive him. So they were interviewed on national television and they were asked, how could you just so easily, so quickly just forgive this person? He killed 12 of your children. And the Amish people said, forgiveness is a value we have. We don't have to process it. We don't have to have a big discussion or meeting about it. This is our value, is forgiveness. So this is what God wants us to do. And I was like, that's pretty impressive. You know, I think for most normal people, people will be very upset and very angry. But what will that anger and upsetness do? Who's gone is already gone, right? Our anger and feelings of revenge cannot bring the dead children back to life, right? So anyways, it's an example of a value. These people had this value of forgiveness, so they were able to exhibit it. Another good example is Srila Prabhupada. When Srila Prabhupada was in his 60s, he realized that living at home in his family situation wasn't very good for his spiritual life. Those of us who know the story of Srila Prabhupada are familiar with the famous story, right? Prabhupada came back from work one day, and his wife had given away his manuscript of the Bhagavad Gita. So in India, I grew up for the first 6 years of my life, I was in India, and I still remember this person would come on a little push cart, and he would yell out something, I don't remember what, but my mom would take all the old newspapers and give it to him, and he would give her like 5 rupees or 10 rupees, something like this. I just remember my mom would do this. All the newspapers would go, and we would get coins, and usually I would get the coins, because I would carry the newspapers down. So it was fun. I was like, I always look forward to this cart man coming, because then I would get some coins in my hand. Then when I read Prabhupada's story, I realized, oh, that's what happened. So someone must have come. his wife was looking for paper in the house, and guess what? She found Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. I mean, talk about book distribution, right? This is a very, not a very nice form of book distribution. And so she took his manuscript and gave it to this recycling man, and he gave her some rupees, and Prabhupada came home and said, "Where is my Bhagavad Gita?" She said, "Oh, I gave it away." "For what?" "I wanted money to buy tea biscuits." And Prabhupada said, "Tea or me, choose." And she said, "Tea." So Prabhupada said, Haribol. His value was, I want spiritual life. I want to serve the instruction of my spiritual master. An ordinary human being would have been like, what to do with these women, and just carried on living in the house. But Prabhupada was not an ordinary person. Again, my point is, ordinary people live without values. They just do what's convenient, they do what's comfortable, they do what feels good in the moment. But great people live by values, right? And Prabhupada was another example of a great human being. So, my request to all of us, not just to all of you, but to me also, and this is a determination I'm trying to make after coming into Krishna consciousness, is let us not settle for an ordinary life. Okay? Let us not settle for an ordinary life. Let us have the power to dream big. Let us think about what are some high-level values we can have. Don't think about goals. Goals are the consequences of values. Most people make the mistake of making goals, right? For example, someone's goal could be to make $1 million. Someone's goal could be to just be successful, have a big house. This is very ordinary. If you go to school in America, like most of our young people do, right, and your goal is to just have a big house in the suburbs and a Tesla by the time you're 32, this is very ordinary. There's nothing special about that. I hate to break it to you. You might be thinking, I'll go to med school, I'll have a really good job. Yes, do it. Do all those things. But that doesn't make anybody very special. That's very ordinary, actually. Because in America, after going to college, if you can't even have a decent job, then any average human being who goes to college here can have a decent job, right? There's plenty of money in America. So all I'm saying is, don't settle for these ordinary goals in life. Have the power, the vision to dream big, to have big values. Let me give you a few examples of some values that our acharyas have spoken about in ancient scriptures, in their books, in their writings, that we can aspire to adopt into our life and make them our values. Here's one. It's tough, but here's one. Become masters of your body and mind. Imagine if you were fully in control of your mind and senses. How powerful that is. When you see somebody like that, doesn't it just evoke a kind of presence in the room? There's a power there. Somebody who can control their mind and senses like that has a lot of power. And it emanates out of them. I've been around people like that. Great souls, great yogis, great sadhus, great gurus. Great, even ordinary, like normal people. Like I remember, I'll give you a simple example. When I was growing up, we used to go visit my dad's family is from Ajmer. Who knows where Ajmer? It's in Rajasthan, right? It's a small town. So we used to go to this place when I was a kid, and right next to my uncle's home, there was another house. And I still remember to this day, there was one old lady who used to live in that house. She had a temple for Krishna, and she literally spent about 14 hours a day in this temple room. And all she did was she was sewing dresses all day, she was making ghee wigs, she was making offerings. And literally, I remember even as a kid being completely fascinated by her. I would just sit near her temple, and every couple of hours, she would just be singing bhajans in some old Hindi language. And then she would offer me little pieces of sugar candy, you know that Indian rock candy? She would offer me little pieces of rock candy. Sometimes she would give me some flowers from the deities. But it was just so attractive. This woman was completely sold out in her bhakti to Krishna. She wasn't like an ISKCON devotee, but she had so much devotion. She spent hours every day in that temple room just doing things for the Lord. So my point is, somebody who is a master of their body and mind, this is a powerful value to aspire for, and it's very attractive, right? Most people nowadays, we're not controllers of our bodies and minds, right? If someone says something to upset us, right? If we're on Amazon and we see something that's very cheap, even though we don't need it. How many of us have bought things we don't need? Right? There's nothing impressive about that. If you tell somebody, I spent 6 hours on Netflix and I spent $300 buying something I didn't need, no one's going to be like, good job. Well done. Good for you. No, that's actually, that's normal. But if you tell someone, I live with 2 pairs of jeans and I just buy what I need. People are like, really? Really? Even on Black Friday? Yeah, even on Black Friday. That's impressive. So someone who's that has that level of control over their body and mind is somebody that we will look up to. Learning to chant sincerely. How many of us here chant regularly? right? We all chant regularly. How many of us chant regularly mechanically? I'll raise both hands. Okay, good. So I'm not alone. Do we realize how chanting is the most, if we study the religions of the world, we can study Christianity, Islam, there is not a single process of religion on earth that gives you a way to contact God on a personal level on a day-to-day basis, as a regular practice. Christians are encouraged to pray, but it's not something they do on a regular basis. This idea of sadhana is a Sanskrit word. It means to utilize your body and mind to connect with God on a regular basis. This is a very unique concept to Eastern traditions. There is no idea of sadhana in the West. If Christians pray, it's not like the Bible says pray every day. If you pray, that's nice. You're encouraged to pray, but actually in Western religions, Sunday is the day for God. That's the day you reserve for God, and that too only the morning time. You know? But in the yoga traditions of India, you're meant to practice sadhana every single day. So first of all, that's very unique. Then on top of that, what is our sadhana? Our sadhana isn't praying to God to remove our problems or to give us a nice house or a nice car. Our sadhana actually is to chant his names so we can discover our innate relationship with him and her, Srimati Radharani. That's a very, very mysterious and confidential spiritual process. It is so elevated. In comparison to the other religions of the world, it is so elevated. But I don't recognize it. For sure I don't recognize it. That's why I can chant mechanically. But imagine if one of our values was, I don't want to offer Krishna empty rounds and these mechanical rounds. Krishna, I'm tired of offering you mechanical rounds. And we made it a value to now start chanting sincerely. Wow. Imagine what that would do. Srila Rupa Goswami says, one appearance of Krishna within the heart makes you a madman. Not like in a lunatic asylum kind of madman, but you know what I mean. Person mad with ecstasy, with love of God, that kind of madman. That would be nice. It would be nice to be a little mad sometimes in spirituality, right? So anyways, that happens by chanting nice, sincere rounds. So imagine if that became a value, that I want to chant sincere rounds. Another wonderful value is no matter how rich and successful I get, I will remain detached and I'll be humble. My brother used to love telling me the story of the co-founder of Infosys. Not Narayan Murthy. What's his name? The co-founder of Infosys. Anybody knows? The second in command. Second in command. That one. So my brother told me one time they were in the airport, right? And he sat next to this person who was wearing like Liberty chappals. You know those Liberty chappals? Those Raymond ready-made trousers, simple white shirt. And in his pocket was a boarding pass for the flight. It said business, first class. So my brother was like, this guy looks like just like an ordinary person, your Liberty chappals and all this. He's a first class boarding pass. So my brother was like pretending to read his magazine. He kind of like went like this and read his full name. It was the co-founder of Infosys. The guy's a billionaire, you know, but he just, and I had one of my cousins met actually Azim Premji, the founder of Wipro. And he went to his house and he told me, because my cousin's a big shot, he said his wife personally served me. And she doesn't just do it for like the special guests, she does it for like everyone. The wife still cooks in the kitchen, believe it or not. He's one of the richest Indians in the world. His wife still cooks in the kitchen. My point is this, when we see somebody who's rich and powerful, but they can be humble and down to earth, it's very impressive, isn't it? For many of us, if we become rich and successful, it might go to our heads. Maybe, I'm not sure. It would go to my head for sure. So a powerful value we can have is, no matter how rich and successful I get, I will treat my wealth with detachment. It's a gift from God. It came as a result of my karma, my blessings from my guru, blessings from Krishna. It's not mine. I came with nothing. It's true. We came, with nothing, and we will go with nothing. So that sense of detachment, it's not mine. Let me just use it for doing some good in this world, for some service. Let me use it to take care of my family, and let me remain down to earth. Let me not think I'm someone special. This is a value to aspire for. And then when someone meets you, and you just treat like, what's a good example? I'm thinking now, anyways, I can't think of a good example right now, but I remember some time ago I met somebody who is so successful and so rich, and the way he was talking to me as if we're like old friends, I was so impressed. I was like, wow, how can you treat me like this? Anyways, it's a value to have, to be detached and remain down to earth, even though we're rich and successful. Make sense, right? So The last point I would like to make is where do we get these values from? So now you might be thinking, well, okay, you've talked about values, the importance of values, and how we should have values in our life, and values makes us a great person, values gives us a great life. So where do we get these values from? How do these values enter into our system, right? Like we know we should chant nicely, we know we should be humble, we know we should become masters and controllers of our senses. We've read these books, right, Prabhu? I'm sure you've read these books, I've read these books. How does this information actually become part of our ecosystem? Who is familiar with a book called the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali? The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, anybody knows? Yeah, nice. So the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is a wonderful text. It's not Mayavad or impersonal, not like that. It's just the principles of yoga. And in this book, Patanjali is explaining how the soul, our Atma, can become liberated from the material energy. And he makes a very wonderful point. He says, when you meditate on someone great, by meditating on them, their qualities enter into you. So the fastest way to actually develop deep and powerful values and great values is read about great people. Read about the lives of great people and then meditate on them. Meditate on Prahlad Maharaj. Meditate on Srila Prabhupada. If you want to be materially successful, read about Jeff Bezos or Narayan Murthy. Read about these successful materialistic persons who did big things in this world. Read about them and meditate on their qualities, and you'll start adopting some of their qualities in your own life. That's how it works. When you think of something in this world, when you pray for something, those qualities enter into you. So if we want to have powerful spiritual values, we have to read about powerful spiritual personalities. And not just read about them, but actually, after we read, sit and meditate and reflect. Who is this person? What are their values? And how can I also have these values in my own life? It's a simple practice. So I always encourage, especially young people, they should read biographies. Biographies are I remember as a kid, when I was 12 or 13, I got the biography of Nelson Mandela. And it was very inspiring for me, actually, reading about Nelson Mandela as a 12-year-old. And then as I got older, I became obsessed with reading biographies. I read the biography of Michelangelo, of Richard Branson, of this person who crossed the Sahara Desert on one leg. I forget, I read so many biographies. It was so inspiring to me to read about great people. So if you have children, buy them biographies. Buy them the biographies of the Acharyas, Lilamrita in an abridged version. Don't encourage them to read Bhagavad Gita Bhagavatam. Just tell them to read biographies right now. Let them read about great people. And when they read about great people in this world, they'll be inspired to follow their example. You see what I'm saying? And also for ourselves as adults, we can read these biographies too and aspire to become like that. So that was my presentation. I don't know, did I go over time, Mataji? Oh, wow, that's a long time. Well, I don't want to keep talking, but this was my message that I wanted to share. Let's take some reflections. Anybody has a reflection they want to share? Prabhu in the back.
One thing was Srila Prabhupada changed the whole world, basically, how many devotees and how many people got transformed. And it's really bothering me. What happened? Why he was not able to, do any changes for his life?
Yeah, it's a good question. If you study Chaitanya Charitamrita, you find out that a similar thing happened in the life of Advaita Acharya. Advaita Acharya was Mahavishnu, but it's written in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that his sons weren't able to maintain the tradition of their father. They deviated actually from Krishna consciousness. And I've thought a lot about this myself also. My realization is simply this much, that Krishna doesn't enforce anyone to do anything against their will. Free will is such a powerful force that even God himself doesn't force somebody's free will. If you read the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is just telling you what are the consequences of your choices and actions. If you do karma yoga, this is the result. If you do bhakti yoga, this is the result. If you worship the demigods, this is the result. But the choice is yours, Arjuna. You choose what you want to do. And I sincerely believe that no one has the power to really change anybody. There has to be something within our heart when we look at somebody else that inspires us to want to change. When we make the choice, when we make the decision to change, that's when change happens. One of the very interesting phenomena that people study in religion is that it's not always possible for one generation to pass on their religious values to the next generation, right? Those of us who are devotees and who have children, sometimes we see that maybe our children are not so interested in Krishna consciousness. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. It's not always 100%, right? So it's not a guarantee that just because the parents are devotees or are very spiritual, that the children will adopt those values. And I think the only answer is free will. Every jiva, every living entity has some choice, some free will to decide what they want to pursue. Another way of looking at it is also, if you look at Sri Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains in Madhurya Kadambini, that to actually accept the path of bhakti, one needs some sukriti from a past life, some sort of bhakti credits in their spiritual bank account. So there has to be some impression of spiritual activity from a previous life. So for in this life, for you to feel attracted to those principles again. So it could be the case that Prabhupada's wife didn't have those spiritual credits. I don't want to speculate, but those are the two, without speculating too much, those are the two ideas that come to mind, is that the living entity has free will. Even God doesn't force anyone to do something they don't want to do. God just informs us of the consequences of our actions. And simultaneously, to actually accept the path of bhakti, one needs to have some sukriti, some pious credits from a past life to be attracted to the principles of Krishna consciousness. And without that, it's not possible, you know. So, what do you think? Any reflections from your side?
You know, I think it's right, but the causeless mercy, even maybe there's the people who are taken up Krishna consciousness is because they would have done something in their previous life, probably. Because even Prabhupada's presence as a pure devotee, right?
Yeah.
So many people change just his
Right,
presence.
right.
But as you also said, when Prabhupada was there, the devotees were there. But when Prabhupada left, they also left.
Many left, yeah.
Many left. So it's basically the presence. One is the presence, and maybe, as you said, the change will happen only when you really take into that account, I want to change myself.
One has to accept the mercy of a devotee. The mercy is like Prabhupada told Vishnu Maharaj, that my mercy is flowing everywhere like rain. It is up to you how you want to receive it. So someone can be in the association of a great soul and never accept their mercy. And someone could, just by the sight of a great soul, feel like something transformed within their heart. So why? That's, who knows? But thank you for that question, Prabhuji. Anybody else? A reflection? Anything that I said that was interesting, useful, not useful? You have an objection? Any reflections from anyone? Yes? No? Oh, Mataji has a reflection in the front over here. Oh, there's one in the back and then one here in the front. Hare Krishna, Mataji. Yeah. Yeah. You mean your question is, can you give someone a Bhagavatam said on Bhadra Purnima, and will they receive some mercy or sukriti for that? The giver or the receiver? Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. You can make in Vedic traditions, when a sacrifice is offered, then the priest at some point will mention for whose benefit is this sacrifice being performed, right? So in the same spirit, yes, you can make a donation, and you can pray to Krishna that, my dear Lord, if you're pleased by this, then let the benefit accrue to this person. You can pray like that to Krishna, that I don't want the benefit, I'm just happy to serve you, but if there's any pleasure on your part, then please bless so-and-so. And of course, the receiver of the Bhagavatam also will receive some mercy for accepting Bhagavatam in their life, for sure. Of course, the real mercy is they have to open the Bhagavatam and read it and then apply it. Just keeping it as it is may not give them so much benefit in this life, but at least some benefit will be there that the book is there in their house, you know. So it's important to give them the Bhagavatam, but then also regularly encourage them to read it, or ideally read with them. Sometimes you need to read with them to encourage them to read. Yeah, thank you for that. Mataji has a reflection here in the front. Is the mic on? Yeah. Can you see? Check if it's on. Oh, you just have to bring it closer to your mouth. Yeah.
So my question, I really feel what you're saying about the most difficult challenge is having control over your mind.
Mm.
Any tips that you have on how to do that?
Yeah. So sure. First thing you should understand a little bit is the nature of your mind. What is the mind? So the mind, you can think of the mind as like a sponge. Okay? Every time you have a thought or you do an activity, you make an impression in your mind, right? And that impression in the mind begs to be resatisfied. So when you enjoy something, then the mind is now hankering to have that experience, repeat that experience again. So what we consider to be happiness in the modern world is simply your particular mind having the desire for some particular experience, and there's an itch. Please do it again. Please do it again. And when we give in to the mind, that's what we consider to be happiness in the material world. It's simply us giving in to our minds. It may not be a thing that actually makes us happy. It may not be good for us. It may not be good for anybody else. But because we gave into the mind and that happiness was facilitated, that experience was facilitated rather, not the happiness. We think, oh, I'm happy now. Does that make sense? So first of all, material happiness isn't actual happiness. The mind has an itch for something, and we facilitate it somehow. And when the itch meets reality, then we feel, oh, I'm happy. But what happens is when you have that experience, that impression in the mind fills up. So then that itch doesn't feel good after a while, right? Like, for example, let's say you have an old phone and you're seeing everywhere these nice ads for Apple 15, iPhone 15 or whatever. So you get this every day, you're going to work thinking, really want that 15, really want that 15. So then weeks go by, you keep thinking about it, then finally you go and buy it. Next day, it's normal, nothing special. Like, it's just like the iPhone 11, it just has 16 cameras instead of 3. There's no big difference, okay? The back of the phone looks like Indra's body, just full of eyes, There's no difference, right? So it's just back to normal. But the feeling was, because my mind had that impression it needed to be satisfied, I did the activity, therefore I think I'm happy for some time. So one thing you have to understand is that, what your mind wants to do is simply the result of habits and patterns. So whatever we've been doing for a long time, whatever we've been hearing for a long time, whatever we've been feeling for a long time, the mind wants to act according to those same habits and patterns, right? And so that's where the difficulty lies, is when you recognize that a particular habit or a particular pattern isn't good for me anymore. Say, for example, every time you get angry at your husband, you break a dish. I don't think you do that. You seem like a very nice person. But imagine if that's your immediate response. Every time he does something to upset you, you take a plate and you smash it against the wall. After a while, you realize, this is costing too much money, But this is your habit now. You can't change it, right? Or if somebody makes, like what happens to a lot of people is, people make fun of something particular about them, it's an insecurity, right? Somebody said something about your hair or your skin. Immediately, it's an impression in the mind to become angry when you hear these impressions. So then you react with anger, right? So the first step to mind control is to recognize how our mind controls us. It contains a series of impressions, behavioral patterns that repeat themselves. And so once you recognize that, oh, I'm just acting according to the programming of my mind. Every time somebody makes fun of my hair, I get angry. Every time he gets angry, I throw a dish. This is just a pattern. It's just a programming in my mind. So the first step to mind control is recognition. So pick an area of your life where you want to control your mind and dig a little deep. Think deeply. Why do you do what you do? What impels you to get into that space in the first place? You see what I'm saying? Like, say if someone is an alcoholic, right? Then before he even takes his first drink, he should think, or she should think, what inspired me to drink that day? What happened at work? What happened in my relationships? So the first step is recognition. The second step is cognition of the problem. What causes me to give in to my mind? And that's where you can start to make a difference in your life. That's where you can start to make a difference. That, okay, let me pick an area of my life where I want to control my mind. Let me find out why my mind controls me in that specific area of my life. What gets me in that position, and then let me fix that aspect of my life. You see, and the power to do all this very well will come from your meditation. See, chanting of the holy names is a form of meditation. And according to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, according to the Bhagavad Gita, this chanting purifies our mind. So when the mind is purified of the modes of passion and ignorance, then we're able to control it more. In goodness, there is some control over the mind. But when there's passion and ignorance, there's no control over the mind. So if the mind will have an impulse to do something violent or something rash, something self-destructive, we have no control over the mind. So one thing is we have to recognize why our mind is out of control, what causes us to go out of control. Another is to do activities that bring our life to the mode of goodness. So knowing what that is, what does it take to make a life of goodness? Things like meditation, waking up early, being healthy, developing certain qualities. The more goodness there is in life, naturally you'll be able to control your mind. Sometimes people ask this question. We had a program last Thursday at our house, at our meditation center, and one African-American man came to the program and he was asking, is it healthy to just drop something unhealthy just like that? Like say you're doing something that's not good for you, and young men nowadays do lots of things that are not good for them, starting with video games, and there's a long list. So he was asking, can I just drop something unhealthy like that? I said, no, it's useless. Because unless you're doing something to bring your life to goodness, and you're replacing that negative habit with something positive, it's just a matter of time before your mind again forces you to feed that impression. That's the thing, because the mind is habituated to it. So there's two things. On one level, you have to know, why am I doing this? What causes me to do this? On another level, do things that bring your life to the mode of goodness, like meditation, waking up early, developing certain qualities, eating the proper kind of food, like that. And when there's some goodness, then there's control over the mind. Otherwise, it's very difficult. It's a struggle, believe me. In the pastime of Prahlad Maharaj, you're familiar with this story, right? In the pastime of Prahlad Maharaj tells Hiranyakashipu, you've conquered the world. He was the emperor of the three worlds. Can you imagine what that means? Like, we know what it means to be the president of a country, but even presidents get impeached, right? Like what's happening right now. So being a president isn't that big of a thing. Hiranyakashipu was the emperor of the three worlds. That means Earth, lower planets, and upper planetary systems. And his son tells him, because you're not in control of your mind and senses, you're nothing. You're a ruler of nothing, basically. Because until one is in control of his mind and senses, one isn't really an emperor or a controller. That's how difficult it is to control the mind. Arjuna says to Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, it's easier to control the wind than to control the mind. So believe me, it's not, when we begin this journey of trying to control our minds, it seems almost impossible. But just like there is a way into the maze, there is a solution to get out of the maze also. And that's what Vedic scriptures is providing, is how do we get out of the maze of being controlled by our minds. So these are the techniques that are given, cultivating a light of goodness, and also just understanding the nature of how the mind works. Does that help? That's right. Very persistent, not giving up. And for that, you need good support around you. So I always tell people that, if there's something you really want to change about your life, make the decision, but then tell 2 other people about it. So they can remind you on a regular basis. Like, Prabhuji in the back has a question. Oh, Prabhu says, okay, after you.
Can I ask?
Yeah, after, go ahead.
So my question, Prabhu, you gave the Dhruva Maharaja example, that he was reminded by the Supreme Lord about his values. So is there something that, values are, that was very interesting actually. I was thinking that one has to live, without any reminder, his own values. So maybe can you throw some more light on it, a bit, why he has to be reminded of his values?
See,
so is that a value?
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
First of all, we should know in Dhruva Maharaja's case, it's a pastime because he's an eternal associate of the Lord. But what happens to him is something that happens to human beings in the material world. We're very tiny, and it's very easy for us to be overcome by the modes of passion and ignorance, rajas and tamas. It is easy for us to lose our center, our particular sense of who we are, and disconnect from ourselves as Krishna's eternal servants. And therefore, we need constant reminders of our values. Right? Because the nature of the world is that it's very consuming. Isn't it? Like sometimes say you're at work and you have some huge deadline and your boss is emailing you, the offshore team and this team and production team, and so much is happening. What do you, at that point, you can't think about anything but just getting the job done. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just the nature of the world. It's very consuming. Then when you come home, you just want to relax. You know what I'm saying? After having such a long, rough day at work. So we need reminders. We need constant reminders of what are our higher values and principles and why are we doing all of this? Because this is the nature of the world. It's like a huge wave that sometimes can overwhelm us, isn't it? I have that experience. So yeah, we definitely need reminders. And reminders come in the form of reading nice books, associating with devotees, hearing lectures, whatever it takes to remind us of our true values. Yeah. And Prabhu in the back had a question. Does anybody have any reflections also, by the way? It's nice to have questions, but If you caught something in the class that was nice or not nice, feel free to share also. Yes, Dhruva.
So speaking of values, there are a lot of people in the world, bad people, who have values. They believe in those values. So what's the check for a good value and not a good value?
Right. So as we were discussing, our value system has to come from something beyond our mind. And therefore, we take our values from the lives of great souls and scriptures like the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam. When we study these books, we then discover in these books what our values should be. I'll give you an example. In the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains to Arjuna what are the items of knowledge. If you study those items of knowledge, I believe there is 16. Pratibha Prabhu, you're a Bhakti Shastri teacher. Do you remember the number, the items of knowledge? Is 16 or 14? 16. So if you study these items of knowledge, each of them is a value worth cultivating. One of my favorite values is perception of the evil of birth, death, disease, and old age. Krishna tells Krishna, this is an item of knowledge. To perceive that this cycle of birth and death is a very horrible experience. And it is. In every life, we take birth, we have families. Like, that's your son over there? Believe it or not, you've had sons in a previous life. You've had daughters. You've had businesses. Maybe you were a king somewhere. Who knows? But all is gone, right? So you acquired all these things, and then they left you. And it wasn't a nice experience. In a previous life, when you had to say goodbye to a son, to a kingdom, to a family, to a business, to a life, it was not a very nice experience. So this is why this material world is considered a place of suffering, because in every life, we create a life, we build a family, we have relationships, we have all these things, and then at the time of death, it all gets taken away from us. So Krishna tells Arjuna, this perception of the evil of birth, death, disease, and old age, it's a value worth cultivating. Another wonderful value in that set of verses is detachment from the ordinary mass of people. What does that mean? It means be an individual, right? Because most people think in terms of how everybody else is thinking. We just try to fit in. But Krishna is saying, that's not so impressive. Don't just try to fit in. Be an individual. That's another value worth cultivating. Let me not just do what everybody else is doing. Let me think of what's higher, what's a more meaningful way to live. You see what I'm saying? So when we studied Bhagavad Gita especially, and we meditate on these verses, then we find that actually Krishna is recommending a value system in these books. He tells Arjuna in the 2nd chapter, those who are wise, they're not bewildered by the changing of the bodies. This is a value of a wise person, that they can see that, birth and death it just happens to everyone. So it doesn't affect them as it might affect us. So this is a value. So, and then of course in the 16th chapter of the Gita, Krishna also explains what are the values of these evil people that you're mentioning, right? So when you study those qualities, it's actually quite... I remember when I first read the Bhagavad Gita and I read that 16th chapter, that's the chapter that convinced me that this must be a book by God. Because I'm like, how did he get it so accurately? You know what I'm saying? When you read those qualities, you're like, how did Krishna figure it out? This is how evil people think in this world. This is their mentality. And it's perfectly explained over here. So this must be coming from a higher place, So the Gita illuminates very clearly what are the qualities of evil people, the values of evil people, and what are the values of great people. And then the choice is ours. The choice is always ours, what kind of value system we want. Thank you so much for that question. Thank you. Rahel has a question or a comment. Over here.
Yeah, so I have trouble focusing sometimes and really understanding what people say. How can we retain information better?
Are you ready to sell your PS2, N64, your Nintendo Switch? Are you ready to put them up on eBay at a discount price? See, the thing is, you're a young man, and you've grown up in America, and we've grown up in this culture of, video games, shopping, constant, 267 channels on your Comcast. When I was 6, that's when we left India, and up until that age, there was, not that I'm any much better at you than being able to hear, but we grew up in a slightly different generation. We had 2 television channels. Like, we didn't have cable at home till I was 6. There was Doordarshan, and I don't even remember the second one. And we got cartoons on Sunday mornings for 2 hours. That's it. And if we were good, then once a week my dad would rent a VCR, and we would get to watch movies on a Saturday night. That was entertainment. We just played outside all day, There was, you flip channels, you have 2 channels to flip through, So there wasn't, and actually, they've done studies now on the minds of people in your generation growing up in this age, with the constant bombardment of entertainment options. And they've shown statistically that your generation has some of the hardest time being able to do critical thinking, think about life goals, and be able to concentrate and focus. It's so tough because from a young age, you're just exposed to so many options where the mind is constantly switching channels and trying out different things. So now this all sounds very gloomy and you're like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like go back to your generation? And I'm not giving up my Nintendo Switch and my PS4, So there's hope. There's hope. Just like somebody who's very overweight, they have to start dieting. They have to start a workout plan. In the same way, somebody who has a hard time concentrating, then you give yourself a regimen that at least for 20 or 30 minutes a day, I will focus on doing something that requires my full concentration. And we can talk about this. You can have a small morning program of 20 to 30 minutes where you do some deep breathing, some mantra meditation, some reading. And then you make an effort as you go through your day, Rahel, that you try to have at least one very conscious conversation. That when you're talking to at least one person during that day, just make it a practical goal. I should have at least one very conscious conversation every single day. Like at the end of the day, I should be able to write down what that conversation was about. So just like we create bad habits, we can also create good habits by reverse engineering, the things that we're used to doing. So I think it's very practical. Just make a goal that every day I need to have at least one very conscious conversation and keep a diary. You can buy him a notebook when you go to the house. You can buy him a diary or a journal. And every night before you go to sleep, just write down in that journal, what was that conversation about? What did that person say? Try to hear what the other person said. And interestingly enough, it takes work. In the Ramayana, which you may have heard of the Ramayana, it's a very famous book. Ramayana is one of the great epics of India. There's a conversation that takes place between Hanuman and Sugriva when this happens, when they're looking for Mother Sita. Yeah, if everybody remembers this story, there's a particular section of the Ramayana where they're all spread all over India. The different armies are spread all over India, and they're looking for Mother Sita. There's a conversation that takes place between Sugriva, who is one of the monkey warriors, and Hanuman, where Hanuman describes the 8 types of intelligence. What are the 8 symptoms of good intelligence? And one of the symptoms of good intelligence is being able to hear the words of others. And the second symptom of good intelligence is being able to understand the words of others. So it takes work. It's a symptom of good intelligence, and it takes work. So, make a plan. Make a plan to have conscious conversations, write them down, do something every single day, 20 or 30 minutes to focus and concentrate. And I would say limit your exposure to social media and Netflix and things like that. These things are not very good for us. So as much as possible, I'm not saying give up video games. That'll make you very boring. But if you can even just limit, just tell yourself, I'll just play for an hour a day or 30 minutes a day, and then you'll see that this makes a difference. Hopefully you can, yeah? Okay, sounds good. Anybody else? Oh, we're past time now, 6:36. I'm so sorry. Okay, what's next? Oh, announcements. Okay, thank you so much for your attention. Hope I didn't bore you. Hare Krishna. Hope to see you again.
I think what you heard is possible, I can proudly say, only in ISKCON. This kind of speakers, and so humble, so knowledgeable, so kind, drove all the way from Chicago in this cold winter to share the word of wisdom and knowledge with you. So please take advantage of him. He will be available for some time. Any more questions you have, please feel free to see Prabhu. So Prabhu, again, thank you so much. We are humbly obliged to you. Thank you. Again, as I keep announcing every Sunday, this is Premda Mataji is not here, you can see, and not having Premda Mataji and Dhanjay Pandit Prabhu, we feel like something is missing, isn't it? And of course, we don't have our original deities, so our entire effort is to bring the deity to our altar so that they can stay forever and inspire us. So today, Sunday Feast, every Sunday we organize this Sunday Feast, and we have a Sunday Feast sponsors, but somehow this Sunday we didn't have. So this Sunday Feast is from temple to all of you, and it's a wonderful feast, and please go and enjoy. With that, I want to let you know, Ekadasi is tomorrow, and the bake sale team has prepared some wonderful prasadam, but it's for purchase, and please run for it before it runs out. So go grab it, whatever you want. Um, Regarding, I'd like to give you, oh, by the way, today's Sunday feast is cooked by some very, very special person. She is not an ordinary person. I will a little bit embarrass her. She is Ramya Babu. She's an Ivy League grad. She is from Cornell University. So every chapati that you will eat today, puri, so it is cooked from Ivy League. How about that? So Ramya is very talented and daughter of our Sethi Roman Prabhu. She always has been coming here and helping. But today they were inspired to do some service. So Ramya, we love your puri and hope you will like it. Thank you. And again, you are one of our inspiration. There are a lot of kids, and if all ISKCON kids go to Ivy League like you, our purpose is solved, and they will go. Sagun is doing wonderful. I'm sure remaining will come. So Ramya, would you please come forward? I have a small gift for you. This is a magnet for our deities, so please keep it. Likewise, for temple construction project, again, many things happens when we take a large and bold step. This is what Prabhupada has taught us. I think, didn't he say that I can't think small, right? This is somewhere he said that I can't think small. So we as a devotee, how can we not think what Prabhupada wants us to think? And with our endeavor to build this small temple, here is absolutely a reciprocation that we are receiving from Prabhupada, and we want to give it back. There's so many stories and incidents that happens, but the only way you can realize that incident if you participate. And please talk to me. And here's one or two things I want to share with you. This happened as recent as this week. We somehow, so we wanted to build this temple with loan, bank loan we have to have. And somewhere we said, oh, we want 2 million loan guarantor, right, Prabhu? And we don't know from where this will come, but we said, oh, congregation will give loan guarantor. And I'm very proud to tell you that today we have received $2 million loan guarantee from our congregation. So these kind of things makes so easy, because when the outsiders, outsiders means the people who are not very directly involved, when they see that the temple devotees are putting so much endeavor, then they also come forward, right? So this is, with that, I guess our loan process will start, and that guarantees the temple construction for this year. So have nobody noticed that temple construction not begin. We will be getting the loan bank approval. In fact, bank already called us and say we are ready for you. So hopefully that will happen. But in this process, the one person, I mean, there's always, when the Prabhu was talking about Ramayana, so the Setu was built by many different people, many different monkeys and Banas and Sukra, but the one person always goes out of the way to help. And for us today, for this purpose, our Hanuman is none other than Kamlesh Patel Prabhu. He himself personally gave $500,000 loan guarantee. Now I know, again, my job is to embarrass you for a little bit. Prabhu, you are so kind. You could have easily waited, and you could have let everybody come, and then you even didn't bother to ask who is giving what number. Straight away $500,000. So that makes so easy. So thank you. So Prabhu, can you please come forward? I want to apprise you with it. Prabhu, can you put the mala? Sokakis Prabhu, can you please join me? So this is what ISKCON is built about. It's not about gimmick. It's not about anything. It's a sincere effort that we all put in. We don't know where our destiny will be, but we'll keep trying. So those of you who don't know, Stoka Krishna Prabhu, he has been sincerely working in financial aspect of this. So ensuring that we have a loan guarantor, working with bank, right credit, right. And by the way, Prabhu, again, he works for Chase. He's one of the executive in Chase, so he knows all the details. So with that, I'll let Prabhu to speak a little bit about finance aspect of project.
Shyam Prabhu, thank you. Hare Krishna, everybody. Just wanting to let you all know that this was a dream for all of us. When we moved into the, I'll just take a couple minutes, so I just want to give you some background. When we moved into this center in 2010, June of 2010, we had no idea that we are going to be having a Krishna temple here one day. We just had about 20 families that were there, and I can tell you this, that Maharaj, Ramapad Maharaj, our Guru Maharaj, who's been guiding us, was very instrumental in us getting this place. And many times he had discussions with us that he would like a place which is in town, which is right by the expressway, which should not have any noise factors. Whatever he envisioned and thought, everything is manifesting. And how that happens, it's all up to the lordships. So coming back to this part, that this is a dream that is going to be coming to reality. And just to give you an idea, when you really look at the scope of this thing, phase 1, we spent almost $1 million. By the time this temple will be built, it may be in the $8 to $10 million range. And who is arranging all this? It is the Lordship. You and me can be instruments, and I want to recognize Kamlesh Prabhu again. For phase 1, it was not said, but I just want to let you know that for phase 1, he was the only guarantor for the loan. So thank you, Prabhu, for encouraging us. And we will always be indebted to you, and you'll be like a role model for us. So now I want to give you an update on the bank part of it. The bank, we are approaching 2 banks. Both the banks are willing to give us a loan. We are doing this with 2 things in mind, that the loan that we are going to be taking is about $2.5 million. Both the banks are going to come up with commitment letters. Whatever checklist they had, they gave us. We've collected it. These personal guarantees that we are giving the bank is not really required by the bank, but it is to make the bank a little bit more comfortable, because the collateral is there and other stuff is there, but they want to have somebody that they can go to in case the temple defaults. But the chance of that happening is very, very remote, because we have an advisory committee that is giving us $1 million. We're just taking $2.5 million loan, and the project for phase 2 is about $5 million. The banker told me this, that the day you give me this checklist of items along with personal guarantees, within 1 hour I'll give you a commitment letter, subject to certain terms. So we are this close. Our goal is to try and break ground in the month of May, and we still are holding ourselves accountable for that, and we encourage. So now I just want to appeal to everybody here in general. The loan is for $2.5 million. We have $2 million of personal guarantees. We need 500,000, 5 people or 10 people or 50,000 or 5 people with 100,000 more. So when we give the packet to the bank has the personal guarantees on top. That'll be the best, the sweetest, if possible. So my appeal to everybody here is, if you feel comfortable, please come and see me, please see Shyam Prabhu, please see Damodar Leela Prabhu. We would be happy to explain to you what it takes to do a personal guarantee. But we want you all to keep continuing to come, pray for us, so that we can break ground and we can deliver this temple to all of you.
Thank you, Prabhu. So likewise, as we work on all these, the donations are also coming. We had one very, from Wipro Technology, he used to be very senior executive in Wipro, he quit recently. So Hiral Chandana, he gave, and his family, in fact, in all bad weather, he drove and gave $1,000 for a brick. So likewise, yesterday there was one of our committee member, Neelam Duvedi. So there was a program at her home, and this was a personal program, but she announced everybody to come forward and support the temple. So people at every level are planning to do it. So my request to all of you is that be the part of this movement. Let's not, let's not be the someone every time staying on the fence and thinking, oh, what if, what question, and you have questions, ask, but then put an effort to participate. That will make all the difference. There is always a risk, there is always a reward, but your participation is what everything needed. With that, thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Please take blessing and have a wonderful prasadam waiting for you. Thank you.